So it was only literally just a year and a half ago or so that Collingwood were considered to be the most scary team in the AFL. They were the team that when you saw them, you would basically crap yourself harder than a man who just ate straight Taco Bell for like 2 hours. Again, they were that team. They were that guy. They were the scary ass team that not only won most of their games by pure pressure, but also would end up winning the 2023 premiership. And again, they obviously had a really good formula that has ended up translating to a couple different teams who have also gone on to evolve that. Again, Collingwood didn't start it, but they evolved it from their own. Hawthorn have now evolved it, and even a couple other teams are really kind of implementing some of the things that Collingwood did in that 2023 season to their 2024 team that they did, and now their 2025 team. But of course, we would know that the AFL was not scared of Collingwood for long. In fact, they were extremely tested, not only by injuries, but the way their list, of course, worked with a ton of older players in 2024. After all, they didn't make the 8, and it looked like a little bit of a disaster. But as a lot of you guys know, Collingwood decided to kind of give the double bird to every single AFL team out there and said, look, if you think we're going to not try and contend for a flag anytime soon, you're crazy, because we're going to go out and get Dan Houston, arguably the best halfback in the game, and of course Harry Perryman, who's an excellent defender who wants to work himself into being a midfielder. So they're kind of, asking not only themselves, but asking these teams, of, are you guys going to be scared of us in 2025? And the AFL team's asking, should we be scared of Collingwood in 2025? Again, before I do get into why I think teams probably should be watching out for them, like how children should be watching out for Michael Jackson at a Wiggles concert back in the day, I just got to say, there are still a decent amount of you guys who watch these videos who are not yet subscribed to their channel. So it would obviously mean a lot to me if you could leave a like on this video, which lets me know you guys are, of course, enjoying it. And even subscribe to the channel so you never miss, the latest AFL video and even some of the other stuff I've got planned coming in 2025. I might even have to make an OnlyFans in 2025. It's getting rough out here. I swear to God, it was like $11 to get a thing of lettuce in 2024. And that's crazy because probably 2 years ago, a lettuce iceberg was like $1.50. Now you have to take out a loan from frickin' ANZ to pay for it. But of course, yeah, Collingwood had a lot of shortcomings in 2024. No one is not saying that, but I genuinely believe there were a couple of reasons why this didn't, why they didn't go on to do what they did in 2023. And first and foremost, I made a video earlier on or later towards the end of 2024, saying that one of Collingwood's most important role players was Dan McStay, and how no one really realised it or respected him to the max until he got injured. Of course, the role that he played in 2023 ended up being extremely underrated. Again, not only was he Collingwood's number one key forward, but if he wasn't kicking goals for the team, which wasn't necessarily his job, he was absolutely going out there and not only crashing, but destroying packs and making sure the ball were to come down to a player like Jack Ginnivan, who was, of course, roving and would eventually benefit from it and hit the scoreboard. Again, they promised players like Lachie Schultz, who were brought into the team, that is exactly what you were going to get. It's just unfortunate, though, the key forwards that Collingwood had in 2024 were not able to replicate this. Of course, Dan McStay was out for nearly the whole entire year with a pretty bad leg injury, and Mason Cox was a shell of his 2023 self in 2024. Cameron, I think, battled a couple injuries here and there, and even when he played, he had them. And of course, Ash Johnson as well. Ash Johnson.
Experienced VFL footballer playing on Neville Cheddar because he doesn't lose one-on-ones.
Frankston crew thought it was out. Johnson, your wasn't.
Oh,
Supreme chase.
Anyway, due to the fact of Collingwood not having a genuine key forward who could bring the ball down, it was really hard at times for Collingwood to score. And then when Brody Mychek had a lot of injury issues as well, it created a massive problem where two of their marking options and a guy in Dan McStay who was constantly Mr. Reliable in bringing the ball down to the ground were no longer there, meaning that kind of a lot of the small forwards that Collingwood had were ultimately ineffective as well. Again, in 2023, we also know that Nathan Murphy would end up going to retire at the end, who was an absolute rock for Collingwood down back and was one of the reasons teams were scared of them, because he kind of played that key defender lockdown role, which meant that a guy like Darcy Moore could of course spring off and play as a second man and as a defender who would come in and pick off the ball, kind of like a safety in the NFL, right? That is exactly the role that they were able to do, but with no Murphy there, Darcy Moore had to become much more of a lockdown defender this year, which, quite frankly, there were games he legitimately sucked at and was getting called out by Kane Corns every other second of the day, and it looked like a massive hole. You not only had a massive hole down back, but a massive hole up forward, and those were the two biggest injuries that led to Collingwood missing out in the 8 in 2024. So it's very clear that maybe Collingwood needed to go and address this key forward problem and address this key defender problem. Instead, they went out and brought in an elite halfback and another defender who can play potentially midfield. Again, it raised some questions to ultimate critics who said that that wasn't their main target, but at the end of the day, critics and AFL fans, and specifically Collingwood fans, seem to genuinely love the fact that they brought in two really solid players to come back and help this team. Again, there's still every chance that Collingwood do a Richmond and their team is just too old and is too past it, and bringing players like Tim Taranto and Jacob Hopper just aren't enough, and that's what could happen with them. But at the end of the day, you can't fault them for trying to at least try and contend and do what Geelong have done and remain successful for a lot of years. Again, should AFL teams be scared of Collingwood? Yes and no. And I'm going to slightly lean on the yes theory of this, just based off the fact that Dan McStay will be coming back and Brody Mychek for them, touch wood for Collingwood fans, will hopefully have a healthy year, meaning not only do they get a ton more goals, a ton more marks, and a ton more knees in, defenders' backs and crashing packs and whatnot, but you also mean that your small forwards like Lachie Schultz and Jamie Elliott should hopefully be much more effective as they are able to crumb the ball now and actually use their groundwork skills and what they are as players to effectiveness, right? So I think that's a massive bonus. You also add in now Dan Houston, who's one of the best halfbacks in the game, who will play a lot more midfield for them. Harry Perryman, who is a really good lockdown defender who he believes he can play a lot more midfield, and that's why he's gone to Collingwood. So that also does free up Nick Dacos a lot more, who had to do a lot bigger of a role considering Tom Mitchell was injured for most of the year. Again, Mitchell's supposed to be back from injuries, but I wouldn't fully count on him, and I don't think Collingwood are as well. That's why they brought in those players. And you're just hoping now that Collingwood, along the lines, have found now a guy in 2025 who can finally settle in to that Nathan Murphy role and play that lockdown key defender spot. And Darcy Moore can finally go back to the Darcy Moore that we, of course, know him to be. Again, is some of these things fantasy? Semi, because replacing Nathan Murphy is a tough ask. It's also like, you are asking a lot from Dan McStay, who just came back from a pretty crappy injury. A lot of Brody Mychek still to continue to play the role that he has been. And you're asking a lot of these older players who probably should have suffered a lot more injuries than they have with the age and whatnot to go on and have another really solid, healthy year, where I just think still side bottom. I didn't like a lot of the things he did last year, especially at the start. Scott Pendlebury, to be honest, did not think had a good year last year. I don't know if that's controversial or not, but there were times where he was getting absolutely burnt out and his speed was quite often not great. So that's that. Jeremy Howe, again, a lot of injuries led to not much production last year, amongst a ton of other players that I think a lot is still being relied on them to do a lot. So we'll see how they go, but I think AFL teams will be watching out for Collingwood, especially now that they've got some guys back in, added in 2 really solid free agents. But of course, again, if you haven't already, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for all those AFL content and news. Go check out my gaming channels and my IRL/long channels, which will be getting linked down below. And I guess I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.